faithfully bringing you value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, I'll be discussing the book Alan Turing, The Enigma, subtitled The Puzzle Solver. In 1939, while Europe was engulfed in war, the town of Bletchley in North London remained surprisingly calm. In spring, residents would often spot a shabby young man on a rickety bike wearing a gas mask rushing to the town's code center, off to work. Seeing this, anyone who didn't know better would instinctively glance up at the sky. They'd think it was a German air raid, but really, the young man was just suffering from hay fever. You've probably guessed it by now. This quirky young man is our hero, Alan Turing. Alan Turing was a renowned British mathematician in the 20th century. During World War II at Bletchley Park, he created the Turing bomb to decipher German codes, aiding the Allies in victory. Additionally, he pioneered the Turing machine and Turing test, laying the groundwork for computing and artificial intelligence, earning him the title Father of Computer Science and Father of AI. Sadly, this brilliant mind was prosecuted for being gay at age 40 and subjected to chemical castration. 2 years later, he was found dead at home with a half-eaten poisoned apple next to him. Of all biographies on Turing, Andrew Hodges' Alan Turing, The Enigma, is regarded as the most definitive. Similar to Turing, Hodges is both a mathematician and gay. He devoted 6 years to gathering extensive primary sources on Turing, resulting in this book, which inspired the 2014 biographical film. The movie The Imitation Game was adapted from this work. Next, we'll trace Turing's journey to explore how his brilliant concepts, the Turing bomb, Turing machine, and Turing test, came to be. How did they drive the progress of computing and artificial intelligence? And behind these innovations, what was Turing's own enigmatic life like? Born in London in 1912, Alan Turing was fostered by a military family as his parents worked in India, seeing them only once a year on their leave. As a child, Turing was lively, playful, and very smart. He learned to read in just 3 weeks using a book called Happy Reading. But he was also a noisy and troublesome kid. According to his brother John's recollections, young Turing would always throw his clothes everywhere. As for which shoe went on which foot, it made no difference to Turing. When playing games, if other children let him win on purpose, he wouldn't just notice, he'd get angry and make a fuss. John always had to look after him. Only during fairy tale plays would Turing temporarily stop causing worry. But whenever a monster appeared in the play, he'd start shouting again. However, by age 9, Turing's mother noticed her son seemed to have suddenly changed, from extremely lively to unsociable. Young Turing often stayed alone, pondering things. For example, he'd stare at a daisy, lost in thought, wondering how a flower grows and whether its growth process was like his own. He became fascinated with science, enjoying little inventions like mixing strange inks in his room or crafting his own pens. But the pens he made weren't very successful. They leaked terribly. At age 14, Turing's parents resigned from their jobs in India, returned to England, and enrolled him at Sherborne Public School. Sherborne was a historic English public school. His parents hoped its education would make Turing less eccentric and transform him into a proper English gentleman. But things didn't change. The science Turing was interested in wasn't valued at Sherborne. It emphasized authority, responsibility, cooperation, discipline. These things, Turing didn't fit into this system. He remained sloppily dressed, buttoning his clothes incorrectly. His shirt hung out of his trousers, and he often smeared ink everywhere. Classmates disliked him, and even teachers openly mocked the ink stains on his collar during lessons. In sports class, while other boys loved hockey, Turing had zero interest. He'd either obsess over analyzing the hockey ball's trajectory or run off to the sidelines to observe daisies again. completely forgetting the ongoing game. The headmaster remarked that Turing needed to learn to fit in. Academically, though Turing showed early talent in math and chemistry, he was severely unbalanced. In subjects he disliked, like Latin and English, he performed terribly, often ranking last. Besides this, Turing's handwriting was messy and crooked. He even invented his own calculus notation rules that required teachers to have immense patience to decipher. What on earth was he writing? However, the arrival of his classmate Christopher brought about a change in Turing. Christopher was a year older than Turing. He was elegant in demeanor, sociable, not only excellent in math, but also had diverse interests. He excelled in all subjects and was a perfect role model in Turing's eyes. Under Christopher's influence, Turing not only broadened his knowledge, but also gradually corrected some of his bad habits. For instance, he started paying attention to neat handwriting and tried to answer math exam questions in a way everyone could understand. At age 19, Turing entered King's College, Cambridge, to study mathematics, and there he quickly became a rising star in the math world. By age 22, he was directly promoted from an ordinary student to a fellow at King's College. In 1936, Turing went to Princeton University in the US for further studies and earned his doctorate there. And at this point, although Turing hadn't learned to fit in socially, he was academically prepared to contribute three remarkable achievements to the world. The first achievement was the Turing bomb. It helped the Allies decipher German codes, turning the tide of World War II. In 1939, at the age of 27, Turing had just returned to Britain from the US when he was recruited to Bletchley Park for the British military's decoding operations. During World War II, Germany's advanced encryption technology caused headaches for British intelligence. Actually, before 2-1, common communication encryption wasn't that complex. For example, encrypting letters and words with fixed rules. For instance, changing A to BB, B to C, and so on, then C back to A. So the familiar BBC would become CCD. Communicating this way provided some confidentiality. However, such fixed rules weren't hard to crack. Once the rule was leaked, all messages would be exposed. Undoubtedly, during World War I, the German military's simpler encryption led to intelligence being cracked, causing a reversal in the war situation. In 202, they didn't want to lose again for that reason, so they invented something complex. In the sophisticated puzzle machine, Noge means riddle. What's its English word? Therefore, it's also known as the Enigma machine. The Enigma machine looked similar to an ordinary typewriter with 26 letter keys, but inside were several interconnected rotors. Each keystroke would rotate them, creating new encryption rules. For example, when you first type A, it might become C, type another A, and the rotor turns, possibly making it K. Each rotor had over 17,000 settings, while wiring configurations exceeded 1.5 trillion possibilities. With three rotors, combining their settings and wirings created over 100 quintillion possible starting positions. How to comprehend 100 quintillion starting positions? Imagine the Enigma as a book with 100 quintillion letters. Each letter represents a starting position with unique encryption rules. For each communication, Germans randomly selected a starting letter and used subsequent letters' rules to encrypt messages character by character. The receivers could easily decrypt if they knew the starting position, which letter in the book initiated the sequence. Britain had captured Enigma machines and understood their mechanics. But without knowing the starting letter, decrypting was impossible, like searching for a needle in a cosmic haystack. Britain recruited experts from diverse fields, mathematicians like Turing, crossword champions, chess masters. Before Turing arrived, Bletchley relied on brute force manpower to guess solutions. Suppose 10,000 codebreakers at Bletchley worked on one message, each assigned a billion possibilities to test manually. If each worked 8-hour days, testing 10,000 possibilities hourly, cracking one message could take a century. Of course, how quickly intelligence could be decrypted depended on luck. Sometimes they'd find the correct starting position right away, but that'd be like winning the lottery. Turing's greatest contribution was massively replacing human codebreakers with machines, dramatically boosting decryption efficiency. Using machines to crack Enigma wasn't originally Turing's idea. Holes had invented the Bomba, which used rotating wheels to break simpler Enigma codes. But the Bomba was eventually abandoned without large-scale implementation. A key reason was that in the 1930s, most saw machines as novelties. Few believed they could reliably replace humans for large computations. But Turing thought differently. He firmly believed machines could replace human brains for calculations. After thorough study, Turing upgraded the Bomba by connecting thousands of rotors in parallel, creating the Turing Bomba. The Turing Bomba was room-sized. Each rotation simultaneously tested thousands of starting positions. If suspicious ones were detected, it stopped for human verification. Not only was the Bombay fast, it worked 24/7, soon decrypting German intelligence regularly. Dozens of Bombays working day and night enabled timely decryption of vast German secrets, turning World War II's tide. For example, Germany had the world's most advanced submarines, U-boats. After Germany conquered Europe, U.S. transatlantic shipping became Britain's sole supply line. Yet elusive U-boats sank countless supply ships in the Atlantic. Germany aimed to starve Britain into submission on the islands. Victory without battle. The Turing Bombe decrypted U-boat codes, letting Britain track submarines, reopen sea lanes, and launch surprise attacks on German fleets. Studies estimate Nazi Germany would have surrendered at least 2 years later without Turing's decryption work. War casualties would have increased by at least 10 million more. However, as a British military secret, Turing's wartime achievements weren't publicly recognized. After 214 ended, the Cold War began swiftly. For secrecy needs at Bletchley Park, vast archives and Turing bombs were destroyed, leaving Turing's contributions unknown. Only in the late 20th century, after the Cold War ended and British military archives were declassified, could people rediscover Turing's immense contribution to the Allied victory. Having covered the bomb, let's discuss Turing's second great achievement, the Turing machine, which laid computer science's foundation. The bomb's wartime impact dramatically shifted perceptions about machines. Post-War II, the idea that machines could replace human computation evolved from Turing's niche belief to scientific consensus. Thus, many nations began developing general-purpose electronic computers. General-purpose meaning computers that solve diverse problems beyond calculations. U.S. scientists led by von Neumann pioneered EMAC, then EDVAC, considered modern computing's prototypes. Von Neumann defined computers with three components: I/O devices like keyboards, storage like hard drives, and CPUs. He also established binary systems and sequential program execution. Quote, today's computers, despite rapid upgrades, still follow this architecture. People called von Neumann the father of computing, but he rejected this title. He believed Alan Turing was the true father, acknowledging his own work built upon Turing machines. Turing conceived his machine in 1935 during mathematician Neumann's Cambridge course. The course focused on Hilbert's problems. Hilbert posed key mathematical questions. Turing fixated on the third, whether all math problems could be mechanically solved through finite steps. This sparked Turing's inspiration. Intuition told him machines could replace human brains in solving all mathematical problems. Thus, the Turing machine model emerged in his mind. Conceptually simple, it simulated how humans solve math problems. Simply put, Turing envisioned an infinite tape with sequential squares and a read-write head moving across it, each movement representing a step in mathematical reasoning. Depending on the math problem, the read-write head would move in specific sequences, modifying square contents accordingly. This step-by-step process continued until all possibilities were computed. Thus, seemingly complex math problems could be solved through countless iterations. Though Turing's idea seemed eccentric, it gained support from his teacher Newman. In 1936, with Newman's revisions, the seminal paper on computable numbers introducing Turing machines was published. That same year, Newman recommended Turing for advanced studies at Princeton University in America. Von Neumann was at Princeton too, though they rarely interacted. He deeply studied Turing's paper. To von Neumann, the Turing machine appeared simple yet structurally complete. The infinite tape function as both input, output device, and memory storage. The read-write head moving along the tape acted as the central processing unit, the CPU, with its operational rules representing what we now call programs. Different programs enable one Turing machine to solve diverse math problems. Thus, the Turing machine was a universal computer. Simultaneously, Turing proposed using binary encoding. Imagine writing binary ones and zeros on the tape squares. This made Turing machines resemble modern computers even more. While von Neumann built physical electronic computers, Turing worked to implement his conceptual model. Post WWM, on Newman's recommendation, Turing joined the UK's National Physical Laboratory to design Britain's first computer, ACE, writing a 50-plus page report, though he differed fundamentally from von Neumann. The author notes, Turing excelled at imaginative thinking in expanding humanity's intellectual boundaries, but unlike von Neumann, he lacked social coordination skills and formal engineering training. ACE's design faced two critical challenges: selecting suitable storage devices and establishing programming protocols. ACE ultimately chose affordable Mercury delay lines for storage. Using Mercury delay lines came at a cost, drastically increased programming complexity. So Turing poured immense effort into programming, though this intricate work wasn't his alone to accomplish. During teamwork, Turing's difficulty with interpersonal communication became glaringly apparent. For example, while he had brilliant programming concepts for ACE, he couldn't articulate them clearly to teammates. Turing thought through associative leaps and intuitive trust. Nobody could follow his mental pathways. This frustrated the team and paralyzed ACE's development. Meanwhile, von Neumann's ENIAC launched in America, and Manchester's Mark I computer neared completion, crushing blows to Turing. Ultimately, Turing left the National Physical Laboratory in 1948. His mentor Newman now taught mathematics at Manchester University, and at Newman's invitation, Turing joined him there. Turing chose Manchester partly to escape complex relationships, seeking peace in this remote city. Another reason, Manchester had built Britain's first electronic computer, the Mark I, where he knew he could contribute. With the Mark I constructed, programs were needed to operate it. Turing's AC programming experience earned him deputy directorship at Manchester's computing lab, tasked with bringing the machine to life. Programming meant issuing logical commands to machines, previously done through tedious physical circuit rewiring. Turing pioneered the idea that instructions could be stored in memory, just like data, similar to how our computer software and files reside on hard drives, pushing computing forward tremendously. At Manchester, Turing wrote the programming manual for their computer, standardized machine language, and deepened his vision for computing's future. During this period, Turing achieved his third major contribution, the Turing test, still used today as the benchmark for evaluating machine intelligence. Precisely for this reason, Turing is hailed as the father of artificial intelligence. To Turing, Both the bomb and electronic computers represented machines mimicking human cognition. He believed if machines could emulate human calculation, they'd eventually replicate thinking and gain true intelligence. He called it the machine brain, not merely copying humans, but surpassing them through self-learning. For instance, he programmed a chess computer that only played beginners, yet predicted computers would someday outplay humans. Half a century later, his prophecies materialized. In 1997, IBM's Deep Blue defeated world chess champion Garry Kasparov. Then in 2017, the more complex Go program, AlphaGo, dominated world champions Lee Sedol and KJ. In 1950, Turing proposed his test in the paper Computing Machinery and Intelligence. It's a game. Imagine a dark room with one human and one machine answering tricky questions from outside interrogators. The machine imitates human responses to deceive those outside. Yes, it's also called the imitation game. If interrogators can't distinguish machine from human based on answers, the machine is deemed intelligent. When Turing proposed this, many scientists dismissed machine cognition as laughable. However, Turing intuitively foresaw the future trajectory of computing. In 1956, artificial intelligence formally became a branch of computer science research. We've now covered Turing's three major academic achievements. He invented the Turing bomb, cracked German codes, and was the unsung hero behind the Allied 12-1 victory. He proposed the Turing machine model, laying modern computing's foundation, earning him the title Father of Computer Science. He envisioned machines' future direction, introducing AI concepts and the Turing test, becoming the father of artificial intelligence. Yet, personally, Turing remained the one in shadows, his inner world lonely and inscrutable, even while pushing science's boundaries. With friends sharing common interests, he could open up quickly. Mentor Newman treated him like a son, yet he never truly blended into scientific communities. To outsiders, his behavior often seemed full of enigmatic contradictions. Manchester colleagues viewed him as almost feral, dark and brooding, inside laughing or raging without reason. Conversely, Turing never thought others rude, as he cared nothing for social etiquette. Once, at his brother John's gathering, he stayed just 10 minutes before leaving without a word. Long-distance running became his hobby, a self-sufficient activity requiring no social interaction. Despite flat feet, he ran a marathon in 2 hours 46 minutes. Excellent for that era. Had a hip injury not intervened, he might have competed in the 1948 London Olympics. He rarely engaged with university affairs. Ask him an interesting math problem for brilliant insights. On dull topics, he'd refuse discussion outright. If you resonated with him, he might devote hours to deep conversation. But unpredictably, he'd suddenly shut the door and walk away. Robin Gandy, Turing's classmate at King's College, Cambridge, maintained their friendship for 20 years. He believed Turing always felt lonely because his interests lay not in people, but in things and ideas. But at the same time, he yearned for human recognition and companionship. The book's author compares Turing's social life to an imitation game. He wanted to live authentically, but had to play the roles society demanded of him. On one hand, he despised politics and wanted his research to be pure, but his experiences at Bletchley taught him that nothing in this world is pure. So, decoding wasn't a purely mathematical problem. It served politics and was a bargaining chip for war victory. Once the war ended, he and his research were no longer of any use. On the other hand, his homosexuality also caused him immense suffering. At that time, it was neither socially accepted nor culturally tolerated. It was a serious criminal offense. One day in February 1952, Turing's home was burglarized. He reported it to the local police, but quickly caught the thief, a young man named Secker. The case should have ended there, but during the investigation, police discovered that Turing's then partner, Murray, had informed Secker about valuable items in Turing's home, prompting the theft. Turing eventually admitted his relationship with Murray. Despite vigorous defense from many who knew him, including his mentor Newman, he was ultimately convicted of gross indecency. Turing faced two choices: imprisonment or chemical castration. For Turing, imprisonment meant not only loss of freedom, but also the interruption of his scientific research. So he chose chemical castration. Chemical castration meant injecting men with estrogen to suppress sexual urges and capabilities. However, the consequences of chemical castration weren't limited to loss of sexual drive and function. Turing soon found himself developing breasts, his voice becoming higher pitched, and even his brain showing abnormalities. Due to the side effects of excessive drugs on his brain, he could no longer think normally. Turing wanted to use his own brain to create more powerful machine brains, but before that day came, his brain was ravaged, so he chose to end his life. On June 7th, 1954, he was found dead in his bed at his Manchester home, with a poisoned apple laced with cyanide by the bedside. Police concluded Turing died by suicide just 2 weeks before his 42nd birthday. Turing's favorite play during his lifetime was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And it's said his favorite scene was when Snow White swallowed the poisoned apple. Turing ended his own life with that very same dramatic scene. Sadly, in the fairy tale, the prince awakens Snow White with a kiss. Yet, in reality, Turing never woke up again. In 1967, 13 years after Turing's suicide, Britain repealed laws criminalizing homosexual acts. Turing machines and the Turing test were ahead of their time, yet legal changes lagged behind. It wasn't until 2009 that then Prime Minister Gordon Brown published a newspaper apology for Turing's appalling treatment. In 2013, Queen Elizabeth II granted Turing a royal pardon. As computing and AI advanced, Turing's significance became clearer, and the Turing Award emerged as computer science's highest honor. In 1919, Turing's portrait appeared on the 50-pound note. While currency has value, Turing's contributions to humanity are truly priceless. That concludes our interpretation of Alan Turing, the Enigma. Reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow. Ah!